Hello there, this is your video presentation on your next step for the Big Brother research paper. Your objectives for this particular video lesson are to 1. Understand how to create an outline through the use of scope questions, and 2. Understand how those scope questions can limit, narrow your topic, and save you time on research paper. So where are you at right now in terms of the Big Brother development? You should have declared a topic by now. The checkpoint A, which is your formal topic declaration, available underneath Unit 3 on your class page, checkpoints for Big Brother. Checkpoint A has you formally declare your topic. That was due by March the 27th, so you still might have a little time on that, depending on when you're viewing this. But go ahead and get that to me because I have some University of Delaware students here in the house with me who are held prisoner that gave great feedback for people who have already submitted their topics. You should have collected some preliminary sources by now and sort of examined the topic to make sure there's enough research out there on it to write effectively. And also, before you have gotten to the slideshow, you should have completed your audience profile workshop. And remember, that was the 2 videos about audience. And then think about some things that you want to consider when you're thinking about your audience. You want to think about who's your best audience, who's your worst audience, who's a typical audience person that might be reading your paper. Having a good idea of who your audience is saves you time, because it helps you not have to explain everything to everyone you're trying to write the paper to. So this really is about airtight organization, and I can tell you from my own personal experience that organized papers do well. You know, if you feel like you're a weak writer, then let organization be your strong point. From our talk about, our inner cave people and how we crave symmetry and how we just look for order as human beings, having good organization in a research paper can really make a difference in the grade. It's about carefully planning what things you're going to write about and what you're not going to write about. And the reason this is so important is students get intimidated because they feel like they have to write the research paper that tells everything about their topic. From A to Z, everything that was ever written on the topic, and you don't. You only have to write about the aspects of the topic that you have narrowed it to. You don't have to tell everybody all the surrounding stuff. Just focus on the things that are important to the aspects of the topic you are addressing. Most of all, it's about trusting yourself as a writer. So how do you do that? The scope questions are based on the journalist questions. You probably remember those from high school. It's a tool we use to come up with good questions that help limit and narrow the scope of your writing. So what you want to do is using the journalist questions, we're about to go over this process, you're going to come up with 6 or 7 questions about your topic. And here's the thing, the more carefully you think about and ask the questions, the better result you're going to get. So you remember the journalist questions from high school? Who, what, where, why, when, all that business? I've added why not and how not because I find that frequently if we look at research with a, well, why not do this? Why didn't we do this? Or how we should not approach this problem, sometimes these questions formed in a negative can actually produce really good results, but they're not necessary. Another thing to remember is that you might have 2 who questions, 3 what questions, and a where question. You don't have to answer each one of these individually, but I find it does help make for a good research paper if you just kind of work your way through these and ask some questions about your topic. This is an example of the scope questions that I used for the sample paper available to you as your Big Brother template paper. The formal research writing paper. And, my argument in the paper is basically that we need to look at animal intelligence in different methods. So take a look at my questions. Who is studying animal intelligence in a meaningful way? Notice that's not just who thinks animals are smart. What are smart animals? Basically what you want to do is add some depth and narrowedness to your question in the sense that you want to research it. Now, here's the magical part. It doesn't take too much imagination to see those Arabic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 become Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, thus creating your outline. And basically, that's all the research paper is. It's scope questions with answers to those questions. You can also see by looking at these questions, you can imagine, if you will, each one of these is maybe a page. And there you go. There's your happy little, 6-page research paper. And they also serve for headings. You can see that each one of these might be a heading in the paper. It's a beautiful way to get yourself organized preliminarily. So it's all about the order of these questions. Questions that are asked in a meaningful order will really help you. So what you want to do is divide your questions into sort of the questions that address the problem about your research and the questions that address your solutions about the research. Okay. Some other things that you want to consider is, you could order your paper in terms of spatially. That is up to down, down to up, left to right, right to left. You could order it chronologically. So for instance, if you're doing a paper on, say, cybersecurity threats, what were the first cybersecurity threats? What were the middle ones? What are the ones we face now? You could do it emphatically, that is in order of what's important first and least important second, or vice versa of that. And then there's good old common sense. Trusting yourself as a writer to know that the order that you're determining for your questions is a good order, and it will fall onto the reader to sort of, figure out what you're really up to in your paper. So beyond these scope questions, it is usually worthwhile for you as well, once you got the scope questions, to kind of embrace alternative outline structures. So let's go quickly through these if we could. If you have a topic that has to do with one event happening next to another and sort of takes place like a procedural research paper, if you will, you might put your scope questions into a flow chart. If you're perhaps comparing two different aspects on a topic, one approach to something versus another approach to something, you might try ordering your scope questions in a Venn diagram. Put the questions that relate to the one aspect of the topic on one side and to the opposite side of the topic on the other side. Another thing you can do is a classification grid if you're dealing with a types of paper. So let's say you're dealing with a paper about diabetes, and you want to say that juvenile diabetes is the hardest to treat. You might put your questions in one of these classification grids. This is something that is kind of difficult, the classification grid. So if this interests you and you're thinking you want to work on it, we probably want to do a phone conference on it, or a video conference on it, a Skype or a FaceTime. This is one I see used a lot, and that's when you have a topic that is sort of cause-effect topic. And imagine, if you will, the squares are the causes and the circle is the effect. Of course, you can rearrange those however you want. You could have 1 square of cause, 3 squares of effect, so on, so forth. But you could put the questions, once again, those that are related to causing, in the squares, and those are related to the effect, in the circle. I have the hiccups, but I'm powering on with this. I think a timeline is useful if you are dealing with a series of events where the timing is very important, and you can just put your happy questions in those blocks. I have a confession. I really hate writing formal outlines. They're excruciating for me. I have a confession. As a writer, I sometimes would write my outline after I wrote the piece I was working on. Have you ever done this? Have you ever written your outline from your paper? So the thing about it is to not let this get you down. If you're someone who really loves formal outlining, it works well for you, then you go ahead and do that. But I am not going to require a formal outline for you. I think you've encountered this enough in the past with research papers, so we're trying to look for new, dynamic, interesting ways to organize our thoughts. And ultimately, if you do it my way, you just change the numbers to Roman numerals and you have a nice formal outline anyway, so it all works out. What you want to do at this juncture is you want to go ahead and create your scope questions. The slide says 8 to 10. That's kind of what we traditionally work with, but you guys know I have shortened your paper a little bit to accommodate you. So I think 6 questions is great, but if you end up going to 8 to 10, that's cool too. We can always add questions, eliminate questions. And you probably want to email me those for some feedback. I might suggest an order. I might suggest a question for you. And I really highly recommend this for anyone who's writing any kind of assignment, because it turns out we use the scope business all the time in work world, and it's a highly useful tool. Please be sure to check on to the discussion board about this particular lecture after you're done viewing it, because even though you may not have a comment to leave, someone may have asked a question or said something that is very useful to you. Hang in there, good luck, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.